Welcome all. In this video, we are going to see about characteristics of Indian economy. I am Dr.M.Radhika, Assistant Professor of Economics, Sri Sharda College for Women, Autonomous, Salem. India is an underdeveloped economy. There is no doubt that nearly one-fourth of its population lives in condition of misery. Poverty is not only acute but is also chronic malady in India. At the same time, there exist unutilized natural resources. It is therefore quite important to understand the basic characteristics of the Indian economy, treating it as one of the underdeveloped but developing economies of the world. Let's see the basic characteristics one by one. First one is low per capita income. Underdeveloped economies are marked by the existence of low per capita income. The per capita income of an Indian in 2017 was $1,670. The per capita income of Indian people is the lowest in the world. The per capita income in Switzerland was about 75 times, in Germany about 48 times, and in US 71 times the per capita income of India. The average per capita GDP of US at official exchange rates was 71 times that of India, while at the purchasing power parity rate it was 13 times. In another word, we can say that per capita income at official exchange rates exaggerated the disparities, while the purchasing power parity figures corrected the position. Even after this adjustment, though the per capita income differences got narrowed down, still the difference between the level of living of the developed countries and underdeveloped countries was quite large and significant. The next one is occupational pattern. One of the basic characteristics of an underdeveloped economy is that it is primary producing. A very high proportion of working population is engaged in agriculture, which contributes a very large share in national income. In India, in 2017, about 51% of the working population was engaged in agriculture and its contribution to national income was 28%. The proportion of population engaged in agriculture in developed country is much less than the proportion of population engaged in agriculture in underdeveloped countries. The next one is heavy population pressure. The main problem in India is the high level of birth rates coupled with a falling level of death rates. The rate of growth of population, which was about 1.31% per annum during 1941 to 50, has risen to 1.19% during 2011 to 16, which is the chief cause of this rapid spurt to population growth, is the steep falling in death rate, which was about 49 per thousand during 1911 to 20 to 7.3 per thousand in 2011. So these comparisons has showed that birth rate has declined, whereas death rate also declined, but still there exists heavy population pressure in the country. The fast rate of growth of population necessitates a higher rate of economic growth in order to maintain the same standard of living of the population. To maintain a rapidly growing population, the requirements of food, clothing, shelter, medicine, schooling all rise. Thus, a rising population imposes greater economic burdens, and consequently, society has to make a much greater effort to initiate the process of growth. Moreover, a rising population leads to an increase in labor force. This rapid at annual average rate of growth of labor force creates a higher supply of labor than its demand, leading to unemployment problems. The fourth basic characteristics of Indian economy is prevalence of chronic unemployment and underemployment. In India, labor is an abundant factor and consequently it is very difficult to provide gainful employment to the entire working population. In developed country, unemployment is of cyclical nature and occurs due to lack of effective demand. In India, unemployment is structural and is the result of deficiency of capital. The Indian economy does not find sufficient capital to expand its industries to such an extent that the entire labor force is absorbed. Moreover, in the agricultural sector of the Indian economy, a much larger number of laborers are engaged in production than are really needed. Accordingly, the marginal product of labor in agriculture is often negligible. It may be zero or even maybe negative. So, therefore, there exists disguised or concealed unemployment in agriculture. Disguised unemployment in rural areas is the result of heavy pressure of population on land and the absence of alternative employment opportunities in our villages. Though there is no doubt that unemployment exists in a greater degree in the urban areas, the rural areas too suffer from the problem of unemployment and underemployment. Thus, the provision of employment to those suffering from open unemployment and underemployment becomes a major task of the planning process in India. The fifth one is low rate of capital formation. Another basic characteristics of Indian economy is the existence of capital deficiency, which is reflected in two ways. The first one is the amount of capital per head available is low, and the second one is the current rate of capital formation is also low. An important indicator of low capital per head available in underdeveloped countries is the consumption of energy. The per capita consumption of electricity in India is extremely low as compared to advanced countries. Gross capital formation in India is less than that of developed countries. In a country like India, where the rate of population growth is 1.93%, about 8% investment is needed to offset the additional burdens imposed by a rising population. India requires as high as 14% level of gross capital formation in order that they may cover depreciation and maintain the same level of living. Yes, still higher rate of gross capital formation alone can pave the way for economic growth to improve living standard of the population. So in this context of the rising population, the present rate of capital formation, though high, is still not adequate. The next one is more distribution of wealth and assets. According to RBI survey, of assets of rural and urban households for a specific period, which shows their existence of sharp inequalities in asset distribution. In rural areas, 27% of households owning less than 20,000 rupees worth of assets, which accounted for 2.4% of total assets. Similarly, about 24% of the households having assets in the range of 20,000 to 50,000 owned barely 7.5% of total assets. This implies that nearly 51% of the bottom households owned just 10% of the total assets, as against it 9.6% of the rich households owning assets worth rupees 2.5 lakhs and above, which accounted for nearly 49% of total assets. However, the situation in urban areas was much worse. That is, 57% of urban households owning less than 50,000 worth of assets accounted for 5.3% of total assets. Against this, nearly 66% of total assets of all urban households were held by 14.2% of households, each owning 2.5 lakhs and above. This shows that urban households indicated much worse asset distribution than rural households. Inequality in asset distribution is the principal cause of unequal distribution of income in rural areas. Next one is poor quality of human capital. A glaring feature of underdeveloped economy is the poor quality of human capital. Most of the underdeveloped countries suffer from mass illiteracy. Illiteracy retracts growth. A minimum level of education is necessary to acquire skills as also to comprehend social problems. Rural areas where illiteracy is a rule are the backwaters of civilization and the centers of superstitions, social taboos, and conservatism. Fatalism and acceptance of misery as part of life and belief in predestined order are all accompanied by mass illiteracy. The Indian expenditure on primary to higher education and research and development in 2017 was about 4.4% of the GNP. The corresponding figure of USA is about 5.44% of GNP. As well as it was very distressing to note that India has been ranked at 131 on the basis of Human Development Index as of 2021. The next characteristics is prevalence of low level of technology. In an underdeveloped economy like India, the most modern technique exist side by side with the most modern techniques as well as primitive techniques in the same industry. But there is no gain saying that fact that majority of the productive units and a major part of the output is produced with the help of techniques which can be described as inferior judged by modern scientific standards. The sharp difference in productivity between developed and underdeveloped nations can be traced to the considerable degree to the application of superior techniques by the former and inferior techniques by the later. Indian economy suffers from basic weaknesses, that is, the low productivity per hectare in Indian agriculture also, and low level of productivity per worker in agriculture and industrial sector, which leads to a consequence of technological backwardness only. Indian farmers are too poor to buy even essential inputs like improved seeds, fertilizers, and insecticides. So it is more expensive for them to buy harvesters, tractors, and sewing machine. In case of manufacturing sectors, vast majority of enterprises in India are run either by individuals or on partnership basis, which is of small enterprises where it is difficult to employ modern and more productive techniques. However, with the liberalization of the economy, new technology is being adopted by a large number of enterprises for their survival. The ninth one is low level of living of the average Indian. Failure to secure a balanced diet manifest in India is the low calorie intake and low level of consumption of protein. The average calorie intake of food is only 2,496 as compared to 3,400 calories per day in most of the developed countries. This is slightly above minimum intake for sustaining life. It is about 2,100 calories. The next one is demographic characteristics of an underdeveloped country. Among demographic characteristics associated with underdevelopment and high density of population, besides this, average expectation of life is also low and infant mortality rates are higher in our country. It would be proper to examine these characteristics. The density of population in India was 324 per square kilometers in 2011, which has increased to 382 in 2011. The average density of population in the world is about 48 per square kilometer in 2011. The average life expectancy of life is also low in India, whereas the infant mortality are higher. In India, the situation increases the dependency load because the proportion and size of non-productive population is higher. The existence of great proportion of this population in lower age group acts against population but favors high level of consumption. Higher dependency load of the population is typical characteristics of underdevelopment. The last characteristics of Indian economy is socio-economic indicators of consumption. Underdevelopment also finds expression through several socio-economic indicators like per capita intake of calories, fats and proteins, population per TV sets, and physicians. India is far behind the developed country so far these indicators of standard of living are concerned. So, to sum up, we can say that despite 5 decades of planning, India continues to exhibit the basic characteristics of an underdeveloped economy, though it has progressed substantially in certain areas. But we have miles to go. So these are the some of the references I have used in this video. That's all from my side. Thank you.